On June 19, 1944, the Pacific sky became the stage for a transformation that would alter the course of air combat forever. 400 aircraft soared into the dawn, but only a handful would return. What transpired that day wasn't merely a battle. It was a massacre that fundamentally reshaped the balance of power in the skies. While many are familiar with the attack on Pearl Harbor, few know about this pivotal day when America unleashed its wrath and decisively annihilated Japan's air armada. Strap in, because this isn't just a story of planes and pilots. It's about a moment that would rewrite history itself. Chapter 2. The Calm Before the Storm. As the Pacific sun began to rise on that fateful morning, Task Force 58 was a hive of activity, preparing for the inevitable clash that would unfold in the skies above. The air was thick with anticipation, like the calm before a storm, as engines rumbled like caged beasts ready to be released. Men moved with purpose across the steel decks, their silhouettes merging with the pre-dawn haze. The salty tang of the ocean mingled with the sharp scent of fuel oil, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change the course of the war. Among them was Lieutenant Commander David Harrington, who was about to strap himself into the cockpit of a machine that promised to alter the fate of aerial warfare, the F-6F Hellcat. This was no ordinary fighter. It was the product of lessons learned through bloodshed and sacrifice, designed specifically to dismantle the myth of Japanese air superiority. Harrington ran his hand along the Hellcat's armored frame, feeling the weight of history resting on his shoulders. With 650 caliber machine guns mounted on its wings, and a powerful Pratt & Whitney engine roaring to life, he understood that this was America's answer to the legendary Zero, and it was hungry for battle. Beneath the calm surface of the sea, intelligence reports had warned that a massive Japanese strike force was gathering. The Japanese, confident in their might, were preparing to unleash what could be the largest aerial assault of the Pacific War against the American fleet. Yet, unbeknownst to them, the balance of air power was about to undergo a seismic shift. The infamous Zero, once the terror of Pearl Harbor and the Coral Sea, was on the verge of its reckoning. In the skies above the Marianas, the Hellcat was primed to write its own legend, and what happened that day would not just be remembered as a battle. It would be the moment when Japan's wings were systematically torn from the sky. Chapter 3. The Rise of the Zero. Just 3 years prior, the narrative was starkly different. In December 1941, Japanese aircraft had surged across the skies of Pearl Harbor, with the sleek and agile Zero leading the charge. This fighter was not merely a machine. It was a symbol of Japanese air dominance, outmaneuvering American planes with an ease that left pilots reeling. The Zero could outturn everything, outclimb them, and strike swiftly, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. American pilots dubbed it a phantom, a ghost that defied the laws of physics and combat. The Zero's legend grew as it devastated American forces at Wake Island, the Philippines, and during the harrowing battles over the Coral Sea. For young aviators like Harrington, these early years were a brutal initiation into the realities of aerial warfare. He remembered his first tour flying the underpowered Wildcat, a fighter that could barely hold its ground against the Zero. Each encounter felt like a death wish, as the Zero's pilots danced through the sky, effortlessly evading attacks while American losses mounted. It wasn't just planes that were lost. It was the lives of brave pilots, many with only a few weeks of combat experience, thrown into the fray against an enemy that seemed invincible. The lesson was painfully clear. For America to have any hope of survival in the Pacific, it had to overcome the Zero's reign. It needed a new weapon, one that could not only match the Zero but also dominate it. By mid-1942, engineers at Grumman Aircraft began sketching designs for a new fighter, fueled by the hard-earned lessons of previous battles. They took into account every weakness of the Zero, every strength it had exploited against American pilots. The design philosophy was uncompromising. This new fighter would be built for brawling, not for finesse. Thus, the Hellcat was born, with an armored cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks, and 6 heavy machine guns. It was a flying fortress. The Hellcat was built to survive, not just to kill. By late 1943, as the first Hellcats joined the fleet, pilots like Harrington felt an immediate shift. The Wildcat had been a compromise. The Hellcat felt like destiny. It climbed with power, dove gracefully, and could absorb punishment like no other fighter. When a Zero would have been reduced to a fireball, the Hellcat would still be soaring. Most importantly, it was simple enough to fly that even fresh graduates from flight school could handle it. But machines alone don't win wars. Behind each Hellcat was the relentless engine of American industry, while Japan struggled to replace a handful of aircraft each month. U.S. factories were churning out thousands. Japanese flight schools slashed training hours, while American cadets were logging over 300 hours in the cockpit. Before they ever saw combat, the math was merciless. By 1944, the balance had shifted dramatically. The Zero was no longer the hunter. It was about to become the hunted. Chapter 4. The stage is set. The stage was set in the Marianas, a cluster of small islands scattered across the vast Pacific, but holding immense strategic value. Whoever controlled these islands would possess the key to striking Japan itself, a prize that both sides coveted fiercely. American naval commanders were acutely aware of the stakes. Admiral Raymond Spruance and Admiral Mark Mitcher assembled the formidable might of Task Force 58, a veritable fortress at sea, comprising 15 aircraft carriers, hundreds of ships, and nearly 1,000 aircraft, most of which were Hellcats. On the opposing side, Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa readied his forces for a counterstrike. His fleet boasted 9 carriers and nearly 400 aircraft, but the quality of his pilots varied drastically. Many were veterans who had fought bravely in prior engagements, but mixed among them were boys barely out of training, some with fewer than 50 hours of flight experience. The disparity was stark. One side was equipped with experience, numbers, and machines engineered for dominance, while the other clung to a dwindling hope, fragile aircraft, and a myth that was already fading. On the night of June 18th, Harrington walked the deck of the USS Independence, where the air was thick with the smell of gasoline and the sound of waves crashing against the hull. He looked at his Hellcat, tail number 29, and felt an overwhelming sense of certainty wash over him. This was not 1942 anymore. This was a new war, one where the tides were about to turn. The dawn of June 19th arrived with an electric anticipation, a feeling in the air that history was on the brink of a seismic shift. Aboard the carrier USS Independence, the atmosphere was charged as Lieutenant Commander David Harrington tightened the straps of his flight gear. The flight deck was alive with motion. Mechanics shouting orders, handlers pushing fighters into position, and ordnance crews hauling belts of ammunition. Every man understood that this day would decide the fate of the Pacific. At the center of it all stood Captain Walter Green, commander of Air Group 22. A veteran of Midway, Green's face was weathered from experience, his voice gravelly but filled with an unmistakable intensity. "Gentlemen," he said, pointing at the tactical board with a fierce determination, "today is the reckoning. Task Force 58 is spread across 15 miles of ocean. Our battleships guard the line. Our carriers hold the punch. And you are the shield. The Japanese will throw everything at us, and you will throw it back hard." Beside Harrington stood his wingman, Lieutenant Samuel Ortiz, barely 20 years old with dark hair and a quick grin. Despite his limited experience, Ortiz exuded the confidence of a seasoned pilot. Think they'll come at us all at once? He asked, his brow furrowed with anticipation. Harrington offered a half-smile. If they're smart, he replied, but smart doesn't win wars anymore, mass does. And mass was what Task Force 58 had in terrifying abundance. The radar screens glowed ominously in the dim light of the Combat Information Center. Reports streamed in, first contacts, then dozens, then scores, and finally hundreds, a tidal wave of enemy aircraft rising from the west. Admiral Mark Mitcher stood on the bridge of his flagship, the USS Lexington, his expression calm and unreadable as he issued clipped, precise orders. Launch combat air patrol, vector fighters to intercept, hold the line. Meanwhile, far away across the Philippine Sea, Admiral Ozawa gathered his storm. His forces, though formidable in numbers, were not the elite killers of 1941. Instead, they were a mix of veterans and inexperienced boys. Some flying machines so fragile that their very skin could ignite under a burst of gunfire. Yet still, they advanced, driven by duty, desperation, and the illusion that the Zero could maintain its dominance in the skies. Harrington took a deep breath, mounting the wing of his Hellcat, tail number 29 gleaming in the morning sun. He ran his hand across the riveted skin of the aircraft, recalling how it had saved his life not once but twice. Unlike the Zero, the Hellcat could absorb hits and continue flying. It was purpose-built to survive. The deck beneath him trembled as the engines roared to life and the first squadron thundered down the catapults, claws of steel launching them into the Pacific sky. As the first Hellcats climbed higher, the air above Task Force 58 filled with dark specks, rising toward the light. Harrington's voice cut through the tension, steady and commanding as he called for his wingman to stay tight. Always at 15,000 feet, he instructed, knowing that altitude was life. The moment of confrontation was near, and the stage was set for a clash that would resonate through history. Chapter 5. Dawn of the Battle. As the dawn of June 19, 1944, broke over the Pacific, Lieutenant Commander David Harrington felt the weight of history bearing down on him. The air was electric, charged with an anticipation that was almost palpable. Task Force 58 was ready, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The first reports crackled over the radio, sharpening the tension among the pilots. Multiple bogies bearing 270, estimate 80-plus aircraft, altitude unknown. The words sliced through the cockpit like a knife, igniting adrenaline in Harrington's veins. Captain Walter Green's voice erupted over the comms, commanding authority and urgency. All units intercept. Do not let them through. The horizon began to darken as shapes emerged, first faint and then unmistakably clear. A black cloud stretching ominously across the sky, filled with Zeros, dive bombers, and torpedo planes, all heading straight for Task Force 58. The anticipation twisted into a taut coil of tension in Harrington's chest. Harrington banked his Hellcat, positioning himself above the enemy swarm, fully aware that altitude was paramount. He could strike like a hawk, diving down to attack and then climbing away before the Zeros could even react. "Remember your training!" Commander Frank Dalton's voice filled the airwaves again, steadying the nerves of every pilot. "Boom and zoom, hit hard, climb away, and live to strike again." The wisdom of experience echoed like a lifeline, grounding the squadron in the chaos that was about to unfold. As the enemy formation spread out below them, Harrington could see the sunlight glinting off the silver wings, painted with crimson circles. Some aircraft flew in tight, disciplined formations while others wavered, uncertain, revealing their inexperience. He could almost make out the faces of the pilots within those machines' young boys, filled with determination but lacking the skills honed by months of combat. "Hammer flight, follow me!" Harrington shouted, pushing the throttle forward. The Hellcat roared beneath him, its 2,000 horsepower engine propelling him forward. The world around him blurred as he dove, feeling the exhilarating rush of speed. His eyes locked onto a Zero, unaware of the predator descending upon it. At 1,000 yards, Harrington squeezed the trigger, unleashing a torrent of fire from his 650 caliber guns. Tracers lit the sky like molten fire, and the Zero's fragile frame erupted in a ball of flames, disintegrating mid-air. "Splash one!" Harrington called, adrenaline surging through him. In the chaos of battle, the skies above the Pacific erupted into a symphony of destruction. Hellcats slashed through Japanese formations, striking from above and then climbing away, each pilot executing the tactics that would ensure their survival. The Zeros, desperate to force turning fights, found themselves outmatched. Harrington saw Ortiz, his wingman, targeted by 2 Zeros, and shouted into the radio, "Skipper, I've got trouble!" Without hesitation, Harrington rolled hard, dropping in from above. His burst of gunfire caught 1 Zero in the engine, sending it spiraling down, while the second broke away, realizing too late the danger it faced. Everywhere he looked, fire bloomed in the sky as bombers fell in flames and torpedo planes disintegrated before they could even line up their runs. The ocean below churned with wreckage, oil slicks marking the spots where valiant aircraft had met their end. The Japanese pilots were thrust into chaos. They screamed into their radios, trying to regroup, but the American defense was relentless. It was a well-oiled machine, with one division attacking while another climbed to cover them, creating a rotating shield of firepower. Harrington spotted a lone Zero attempting an aggressive vertical climb, a skilled pilot who was not easily intimidated. For a moment, Harrington felt the tension as the Zero twisted sharply, forcing a duel. But Harrington remembered Dalton's words, "Don't turn, climb." He pulled back hard, letting the Hellcat's power drag him higher. The Zero attempted to follow but faltered, its climb stalling. That was the moment Harrington had been waiting for. He rolled inverted, executing a split S maneuver that brought him down behind the Zero, unleashing a burst of fire that tore through its fuselage. The enemy aircraft became a falling comet, vanishing into the depths of the ocean below. "Splash another!" Harrington breathed, the thrill of victory coursing through him. By 10:30 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft had been shattered. Dozens of enemy planes fell, burning into the ocean, with fewer than 10 even reaching the American fleet. None survived the gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire that awaited them, a testament to the might of Task Force 58 and the lethal efficiency of the Hellcat. But just as they caught their breath, the radio crackled with urgent news. "All units, new contacts, larger formation inbound, estimated 120 aircraft bearing 280. Harrington glanced at his fuel gauge, still strong, and checked his ammunition. Over 1,000 rounds left, more than enough for another engagement. Ortiz's voice broke through the static, raw with adrenaline. "You ready for round 2, Skipper?" Harrington adjusted his gloves, determination etched on his face. Always. Chapter 6. The onslaught continues. The second wave arrived like a tempest. A dark tide of 120 Japanese aircraft fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo planes sweeping across the Pacific sky. For a moment it felt as if the heavens themselves had darkened, the sheer number of planes threatening to blot out the sun. Harrington tightened his grip on the stick, adrenaline surging as he scanned the enemy formation. "Here they come!" he shouted into the radio, his voice steady despite the rising chaos. "Skipper, that's a whole damn Air Force!" Ortiz exclaimed, his youthful bravado momentarily giving way to disbelief at the sight before them. "Then let's bury it," Harrington replied, steel in his voice. The Hellcats dove again, engines roaring as they sliced through the morning sun, guns blazing. The Japanese formation buckled upon contact, their pilots struggling to maintain discipline, but the air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder, and the skies erupted into a cacophony of noise as bullets whizzed past and explosions lit the horizon. Harrington lined up a Val dive bomber, its bombs swinging dangerously beneath the fuselage. With a squeeze of the trigger, he unleashed a torrent of fire. The impact sent the enemy aircraft engulfed in flames, scattering debris across the sky. "Splash one!" he called out, exhilaration coursing through him. Ortiz's voice crackled over the radio. "Got another Judy, she's down!" But danger was everywhere, and Harrington felt the weight of responsibility for his wingman. Zeros swarmed in from above, trying to pin down the Hellcats in turning fights. One Zero latched onto Harrington's tail, gunfire stitching across his wing. The Hellcat shuddered under the assault, but Harrington rolled hard left, diving straight down to evade. The Zero, too close and too eager, pursued him relentlessly. At 5,000 feet, Harrington snapped into a climbing turn, the Hellcat's powerful engine dragging him skyward. He could feel the momentum shift as the Zero attempted to match him, but ultimately lost its edge, stalling in the process. Harrington seized the opportunity, reversing his direction and coming down like a hammer, guns blazing. The Zero erupted in flames, its pilot's fate sealed in an instant. "Splash another," he muttered, sweat pouring down his face, the thrill of survival and victory intertwining. All across the sky, the same story played out. Hellcats used altitude, speed, and firepower to shred the enemy forces. The Zeros twisted and turned, clawing for an advantage they could no longer attain. Captain Walter Green's squadron intercepted the torpedo bombers, the Nakajima B-5Ns, the very aircraft responsible for the devastation at Pearl Harbor. They came crawling toward the fleet at a mere 200 miles per hour, and against the Hellcats it was a slaughter. Green himself destroyed 2 in a single pass, the ocean below filling with wreckage and debris. Wave after wave, the Japanese pressed on, but the outcome was inevitable. As the clock inched closer to noon, the third assault was spotted. Another 80 planes, but now their desperation was apparent. Harrington could see the fear in their movements. The pilots were younger, barely trained, and this was their last stand. "Good God," Ortiz whispered, his voice laced with urgency. "They're throwing everything they have left." Harrington steadied himself, knowing this was it, their final push. "Let's finish it," he commanded, and the Hellcats rose again, fresh squadrons launching as others landed to refuel. The rotation was seamless, a testament to the training that had prepared them for this very moment. As the third wave approached, Harrington dove on another Judy bomber, ripping its engine apart, flames engulfing it as the pilot bailed out, his parachute opening against the backdrop of chaos. "Got one more," Ortiz shouted, his excitement palpable. "Splash one!" The radio was alive with voices, each pilot reporting victories in rapid succession. "Splash one! Got another Val! They're falling like flies!" The sky itself seemed to ignite, smoke trails crisscrossing the heavens as aircraft spiraled into the sea, exploding in fiery displays of destruction. The Pacific became a graveyard of burning wings, a harrowing testament to the ferocity of aerial combat. By 13:15, radar detected a fourth wave approaching, this one smaller, only 50 aircraft. But these were not elite squadrons, they were scraps, a hodgepodge of training planes and obsolete crafts. "Gentlemen, finish it!" Dalton's voice crackled through the radio, underscoring the urgency of this final assault. The fourth wave barely reached the Americans. Hellcats tore through them with ruthless efficiency, old clunkers falling from the sky within moments. The ocean was dotted with wreckage, and the once crowded skies were now eerily quiet, the echoes of battle fading into the distance. Chapter 7. The Turning Point. As the fourth wave collapsed under the relentless assault of Task Force 58, the tide of battle had decisively turned. Harrington leveled out at 12,000 feet, scanning the horizon for any remaining threats. The once crowded sky was now devoid of enemy aircraft, replaced by a haunting silence punctuated only by the distant sounds of the ocean and the occasional crackle of radio chatter. What had begun as a chaotic clash had morphed into a one-sided annihilation, a brutal reminder of the shifting balance of power in the Pacific. Harrington exhaled slowly, his heart still racing from the adrenaline of combat. Below him, the ocean boiled with debris and burning fuel, oil slicks stretching for miles, marking the graves of fallen aircraft. Life rafts bobbed among the wreckage where Japanese pilots clung desperately to survival, their faces reflecting a mix of terror and disbelief. The battle was decided. Their air arm was gone. In the aftermath, the tally was staggering. Nearly 400 Japanese aircraft had been destroyed while American losses remained below 30. It was not just a victory, it was a complete and utter annihilation. Harrington felt a mix of triumph and somber reflection wash over him. This was a turning point, a moment when the Zero, once feared and revered, had met its reckoning in the skies over the Marianas. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, the realization of what they had achieved began to settle in. Harrington guided his Hellcat back toward Task Force 58, the battle having lasted mere hours yet feeling like an eternity. He glanced down at his instruments, fuel low, ammunition nearly gone, his hands trembling on the stick from the sheer intensity of the day's events. "Independence, this is Harrington returning to base," he reported, his voice steady despite the chaos that had unfolded just hours earlier. "Copy, Harrington. You are cleared to land," came the calm reply from the control tower. Harrington brought the Hellcat down onto the rolling deck, the arrestor hook snagging the wire with a jolt that sent a rush of relief through him. As the engines cut, he paused for a moment, absorbing the reality of what had just transpired. The flight deck was alive with activity. Pilots climbed from cockpits, some grinning, others dazed, and some so exhausted they could barely walk. The smell of gunpowder clung to their uniforms, a testament to the ferocity of their victory. Ortiz staggered over, helmet tucked under his arm, still catching his breath. "Skipper, I can't even count how many went down today," he exclaimed, a mix of shock and exhilaration lighting up his features. Harrington looked out towards the horizon, where oil slicks glimmered, betraying the graves of countless enemy aircraft. "Neither can I," he said softly, "but I know what it means." That night, as the sun set over the Pacific, the mood in the carrier's mess deck was surreal. Not grim or heavy, but almost celebratory. Men laughed and traded stories, the atmosphere buzzing like a carnival. Pilots recounted their kills, hands gesturing animatedly as they relived the dives, gun passes, and explosions. But beneath the levity, there was an unspoken understanding among them. They all knew how close it had been, how easily the tide of battle could have shifted. Captain Walter Green addressed the squadron late that evening, his voice cutting through the noise. "Gentlemen," he began, "today we destroyed Japanese carrier aviation. Not weakened, not bruised, destroyed." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. 400 enemy aircraft, nearly all gone, and we lost fewer than 30. The room fell silent, the reality of the numbers cutting deeper than words. Harrington reflected on the journey from 1942 to this moment, recalling the despair he had felt while flying a Wildcat against a formidable Zero. Now, 2 years later, they had achieved supremacy in the skies. As he leaned against the rail that night, staring out at the endless expanse of the Pacific, Harrington couldn't shake the heaviness that lingered in his heart. He remembered the young Japanese pilots, boys really, who had fought bravely and died believing they could change the tide. The victory, though monumental, was not without its weight. "We broke them today," he whispered to himself, knowing the implications of their triumph. The legacy of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot was not just one of victory. It was a stark warning. War was no longer about a few aces. It was about systems, about nations that could outbuild, outtrain, and outlast their enemies. And now America had become that nation. Chapter 8. Aftermath of the Battle. As the night deepened and the stars began to twinkle in the vast Pacific sky, the reality of what had transpired settled over Task Force 58 like a heavy blanket. The pilots, exhausted but exhilarated, shared their stories of heroism and survival, a camaraderie forged in the crucible of battle. But for many, the joy was tinged with a profound introspection, a recognition of the cost of their victory. In the days that followed, the impact of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot reverberated throughout the military and political spheres. Reports flooded in, detailing the staggering statistics of the day. Nearly 400 Japanese aircraft had been destroyed, a staggering loss for the Imperial Japanese Navy. The once feared Zeros, which had dominated the skies for years, were reduced to smoldering wreckage floating in the Pacific. Meanwhile, American losses hovered below 30 planes, a testament to the effectiveness of the Hellcat and the rigorous training of its pilots. The strategic implications were profound. Japan's naval aviation had been dealt a blow from which it would struggle to recover. The loss of experienced pilots and veteran crews was irreplaceable. While America churned out thousands of aircraft each month, Japan found itself scrambling to replace a fraction of what had been lost. The balance of air power in the Pacific had shifted irrevocably, and the tide of the war was turning. In Washington, military leaders analyzed the results with a mix of relief and renewed determination. The success of Task Force 58 was not merely a victory in a single engagement, it was a pivotal moment in the Pacific War. The lessons learned from Pearl Harbor and subsequent battles had been applied with devastating effectiveness. The Hellcat, with its rugged design and formidable firepower, had proven to be the answer to the Zero's reign of terror. Yet amid the celebrations there were somber reflections. Harrington and his fellow pilots understood that every victory came at a price. They had faced young men, many of them barely trained, who were thrust into battle with no comprehension of the overwhelming odds against them. The reality of war was brutal, and the faces of those young Japanese pilots haunted Harrington. They had fought bravely, believing in their cause, but they had been caught in a conflict that was shifting beyond their control. As the weeks turned into months, the memory of June 19th became a defining moment in the lore of the Pacific War. Historians marked it as the day Japanese naval aviation ceased to exist as a fighting force. The Hellcat, which had accounted for more than 5,000 enemy aircraft destroyed by the war's end, became a symbol of American resilience and industrial might. Its kill ratio of 19-1 remains one of the greatest in aviation history, but the numbers tell only part of the story. The real legacy of the Hellcat lay in its embodiment of a nation that had found its rhythm of war. America had adapted and evolved, transforming its weaknesses into strengths, while Japan clung to a dwindling cadre of elite pilots. America built thousands of aircraft and trained countless pilots, each prepared for the challenges ahead. The age of the Zero was over, and the future belonged to the Hellcat. Harrington returned to the skies many times after that day, each mission a reminder of the lessons learned at the Marianas. He flew with the knowledge that they had changed the course of history, yet he never forgot the faces of those who had fought against them. Each flight was a tribute to the bravery of all pilots, regardless of nationality, who faced the perils of aerial combat. The months passed and the war raged on at the Diaries, with American carriers striking wherever they wished: Saipan, Guam, Tinian, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, all under the watchful eyes of Hellcat wings. 3 months after the turkey shoot, Tokyo itself trembled beneath American bombs, the once unassailable empire now facing the consequences of its hubris. When the war finally ended, it was Hellcats that circled above Tokyo Bay, guarding the surrender ceremony aboard the USS Missouri. The Zero was gone, its reign, legend, and terror extinguished. The Hellcat stood as a symbol of victory, a testament to American resolve and adaptability in the face of adversity. As Harrington watched the sun set over the Pacific, he reflected on the heavy burden of history they had all carried that day. The victory at the Marianas was more than a triumph of numbers. It was a stark reminder that war was not just about machines or tactics, but about the human spirit's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Chapter 9. Legacy of the Hellcat. The legacy of the Hellcat was not merely confined to the battlefield. It resonated through the annals of military history, becoming a symbol of American ingenuity, perseverance, and the lessons of warfare. As the years rolled on, military strategists and historians would analyze the Great Marianas turkey shoot as a definitive case study in the evolution of air combat. The Hellcat, designed not just as a fighter but as a versatile weapon of war, showcased the power of American industrial might. Its production lines churned out thousands of aircraft each month, a staggering feat that dwarfed any comparable efforts by the Japanese. The aircraft was constructed to endure the rigors of combat, featuring innovations such as an armored cockpit and self-sealing fuel tanks, making it not only a formidable adversary but also a survivor in the harshest of conditions. For the pilots, the Hellcat represented more than just a machine. It embodied their hopes, fears, and determination. Many young men who had once flown the vulnerable Wildcats now took to the skies in Hellcats, armed with the confidence that came from a solid foundation of training and experience. Each mission became a testament to their growth and resilience, with the Hellcat serving as a reliable partner in their quest for victory. The lessons of the Marianas extended beyond the hardware and tactics. The battle underscored the importance of training and preparation. American pilots, who had logged over 300 hours in the cockpit before entering combat, showcased the undeniable advantage that rigorous training provided. In contrast, the Japanese pilots, many of whom were thrust into battle with minimal experience, suffered under the weight of an outdated strategy and dwindling resources. The stark differences in training regimes and pilot readiness would be a focal point of military discussions for years to come, shaping future approaches to aerial warfare. As the war came to a close, the Hellcat's impact on naval aviation was undeniable. It became the backbone of the U.S. Navy's air forces, participating in numerous campaigns across the Pacific theater. By the end of the war, the aircraft had achieved a staggering kill ratio, accounting for more than 5,000 enemy aircraft destroyed, solidifying its place in history as one of the most effective and iconic fighters of World War II. But the legacy of the Hellcat was not without its bittersweet notes. For every victory it achieved, there were stories of loss, sacrifice, and bravery, reminding future generations of the human cost of war. Harrington, now a seasoned veteran, carried the weight of those memories with him. He had witnessed the bravery of both his comrades and his adversaries, and he understood that every soldier, regardless of allegiance, shared the same hopes and fears in the face of combat. In the years following the war, the Hellcat would serve as a constant reminder that the sky was no longer the exclusive domain of the Zero. It represented a new era in aviation where technology, training, and sheer numbers could overturn established narratives and rewrite the rules of engagement. As the years turned into decades, the story of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot continued to be told. It became a crucial chapter in the broader narrative of World War II, illustrating the turning points of the conflict and the strategies that shaped the outcome. The Hellcat became a point of pride, a symbol of American resilience, and a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who flew it. The echoes of June 19, 1944, resounded in the halls of history, serving as both a commemoration of victory and a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made. The battle had not just changed the course of the war, it had altered the very fabric of air combat. The lessons learned would continue to inform military strategy for generations, influencing the development of future aircraft and the training of pilots worldwide. Harrington often found himself reflecting on that fateful day, the exhilaration of flight and the camaraderie forged in the crucible of battle. He knew that the legacy of the Hellcat and the lessons of the Marianas would endure, serving as a guide for future aviators and a reminder of the importance of preparation, resilience, and the human spirit in the face of adversity. Chapter 10, Conclusion. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the Pacific, Harrington stood on the deck of an aircraft carrier, the gentle rocking of the ship beneath his feet, a constant reminder of the sea's vastness. The memories of June 19, 1944, played through his mind like an old film reel, the roar of engines, the tracer fire lighting up the sky, the eerie silence that followed the chaos. It was a day that would forever be etched in history, marking the moment when the balance of air power shifted irrevocably in favor of the Allies. The aftermath of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot was a turning point in the Pacific War, not just for the American forces but for the entire course of history. The annihilation of Japan's naval aviation was a stark reminder of the consequences of underestimating an adversary's resolve and the importance of innovation, training, and industrial capability. For Harrington and his fellow pilots, it was a day of triumph, but also a moment of reflection, a realization of the cost of warfare and the fragility of life in the skies. In the years that followed, the lessons learned from the Turkey Shoot would resonate throughout military strategy and aviation policy. The notion that air superiority was essential for naval operations became a cornerstone of military doctrine. The Hellcat's legacy would inspire future generations of pilots, engineers, and strategists, reinforcing the belief that adaptability and preparedness were crucial to success in any conflict. As Harrington looked back over time, he saw the evolution of air combat unfold. The innovations that emerged from the crucible of World War II paved the way for the jet age, transforming the landscape of aerial warfare. The principles of speed, firepower, and maneuverability that the Hellcat embodied continued to influence fighter design for decades. Yet amid the technological advancements and strategic victories, Harrington never lost sight of the human element. He remembered the young Japanese pilots who had faced them that day, their dreams and aspirations extinguished in the flames of battle. The courage they had shown, even in the face of overwhelming odds, served as a poignant reminder that war was not just fought with machines, but with human lives. As he stood on the deck, surrounded by the sights and sounds of the Navy, Harrington understood that the past was not sunt. It spoke volumes about sacrifice, bravery, and the relentless pursuit of peace. The legacy of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot was one of resilience, a testament to the spirit of those who flew and fought, and a reminder of the price of freedom. "From this day forward, the Pacific is ours," he whispered to himself, the words echoing in the quiet of the evening as the sky had changed forever. And the Hellcat had claimed its place in history not just as a fighter aircraft, but as a symbol of a nation that had risen to meet its challenges head-on. And as the stars began to twinkle above, Harrington felt a sense of hope. The past may have shaped their present, but it was the lessons learned and the sacrifices made that would guide the future. A future where the skies were no longer ruled by the Zero, but by the enduring legacy of the Hellcat, a reminder that courage, innovation, and resilience could overcome even the darkest of days. Join us again, he thought, for there are more battles, more machines, and more forgotten voices waiting to be heard. The story of the past was still being written, and Harrington was determined to keep sharing it, ensuring that the sacrifices of those who had come before would never be forgotten. And so, with a heart full of memories and a spirit unyielding, he turned away from the horizon, ready to embrace whatever the future would bring. Would you like me to continue with anything else or make adjustments to the script? Chapter 11. The Future Beyond the Skies. As the years rolled on, the lessons of the Great Mariana's turkey shoot continued to resonate not just within military circles but also in civilian life. The stories of heroism, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of excellence began to seep into the national consciousness, shaping the very fabric of American identity in the post-war era. In the years following World War II, the United States emerged as a superpower, and the legacy of the Hellcat played a pivotal role in that transformation. The aircraft represented the triumph of American ingenuity and resilience, serving as a powerful reminder of what could be achieved when a nation united in purpose. The spirit of the pilots, engineers, and workers who contributed to the war effort became emblematic of the American character, determined, innovative, and unyielding in the face of adversity. The aviation industry, bolstered by the lessons learned during the war, began to flourish. Engineers and designers inspired by the Hellcat's success pushed the boundaries of technology. The principles of design, aerodynamics, and manufacturing efficiency that had been honed during the war laid the groundwork for the jet age. It was a time of unprecedented growth in aviation, with commercial airlines emerging and air travel becoming accessible to the masses. Harrington watched these developments with a sense of pride, reflecting on how far they had come since those harrowing days in the Pacific. He often found himself speaking to young aviators, sharing his experiences and imparting the wisdom that had been forged in the skies. He emphasized the importance of training, teamwork, and the relentless pursuit of excellence, lessons that transcended the battlefield and applied to every aspect of life. In schools and communities, the stories of the Great Mariana's turkey shoot were taught as part of history lessons, inspiring a new generation to appreciate the sacrifices made by their predecessors. Books, documentaries, and films began to emerge, chronicling the bravery of the pilots and the significance of the battles fought in the Pacific. The narrative of the Hellcat and its pilots became a source of inspiration, reminding everyone that courage and determination could overcome insurmountable odds. As the decades passed, the world saw a shift in the nature of warfare. The Cold War ushered in a new era of conflict, one defined by nuclear deterrence and proxy wars. Yet the importance of air superiority remained a constant theme in military strategy. The lessons learned from the turkey shoot continued to inform air combat tactics, emphasizing the need for innovation, adaptability, and a well-trained force. Harrington, now a respected voice in military circles, often found himself reflecting on the timeless nature of these lessons. He understood that while technology had evolved, the core principles of courage, leadership, and sacrifice remained relevant. He frequently reminded young pilots that their mission went beyond just flying. It was about safeguarding freedom and ensuring that the sacrifices of those who came before them were honored. On anniversaries of the Great Mariana's turkey shoot, veterans gathered to commemorate the day, sharing stories and remembering their fallen comrades. These gatherings served as a solemn reminder of the cost of war and the importance of camaraderie. Harrington took pride in participating in these events, honoring the legacy of his fellow pilots and ensuring that their sacrifices would never fade from memory. As the years turned into decades, the Pacific skies transformed into a realm of peace. The remnants of conflict gave way to cooperation and diplomacy, and the lessons learned from the battles fought in the air served as a foundation for future alliances. The United States and Japan, once adversaries, began to forge a partnership that would reshape the geopolitical landscape. Harrington marveled at this transformation, understanding that the legacy of the Hellcat was not just one of destruction but of rebirth. The aircraft had played a pivotal role in ending a brutal conflict, but had also become a symbol of hope, illustrating the potential for nations to rise from the ashes of war and work towards a brighter future. In his later years, Harrington often found himself at air shows and museums where the Hellcat was displayed as a testament to American aviation history. As he stood next to the aircraft, he would watch young children gaze in awe at the fighter that had once dominated the skies. He would share stories of bravery and sacrifice, igniting a spark of curiosity in their eyes. "Remember," he would tell them, "this plane represents more than just metal and engines. It embodies the spirit of those who fought for freedom, and the belief that through hard work and unity we can overcome any challenge." As the sun set on another day, Harrington felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew that the story of the Great Marianas turkey shoot was far from over. It would continue to inspire, educate, and remind future generations of the importance of bravery, resilience, and the enduring spirit of humanity. And so, with a heart full of pride and hope, Harrington embraced the future, ready to share the legacy of the Hellcat and the lessons of the past, ensuring that the sacrifices made in the skies would never be forgotten. Would you like me to continue with any specific details or themes, or is there something else you would like to explore? Chapter 12. Reflection and Remembrance. As the years turned into a tapestry of memories, Harrington often found himself reflecting on the profound impact of those moments in the skies over the Pacific. The Great Marianas turkey shoot was not just a chapter in a history book. It was a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for growth in the face of adversity. He understood that remembrance was a powerful tool, one that could bridge generations and instill a sense of purpose in those who would inherit the future. To honor the legacy of the Hellcat and the pilots who had flown it, Harrington became actively involved in various veterans organizations. He participated in mentorship programs where he shared his insights with young aviators and military enthusiasts. He believed it was crucial for the next generation to learn not only about the technical aspects of flying, but also about the values that guided them: integrity, teamwork, and respect for their opponents. Every June 19th, on the anniversary of the turkey shoot, Harrington would organize gatherings with fellow veterans. They would share stories recounting the bravery and camaraderie that had characterized their experiences in the war. These meetings became a source of solace and strength, a way to celebrate their shared history while acknowledging the sacrifices of those who had not returned. One year, they decided to hold the commemoration at a local airfield where a restored Hellcat was on display. The aircraft served as a physical reminder of their past, a vessel that had once soared through the skies in defense of freedom. As Harrington stood in front of the aircraft, flanked by fellow veterans, he felt a deep sense of connection to the young men who had climbed into the cockpit so many years ago. "Today we gather not just to remember our victories," Harrington began, addressing the crowd of veterans, families, and young aviation enthusiasts. "We gather to honor the courage of every pilot who took to the skies regardless of which side they fought for. War is a brutal teacher, and we must learn from its lessons, lest we repeat our mistakes. The audience listened intently as Harrington recounted stories of bravery, not only from American pilots but also from their Japanese counterparts. He emphasized that every pilot who flew in combat had dreams, aspirations, and families waiting for them at home. These reflections served to humanize the conflict, reminding everyone that, at its core, war was a tragic consequence of failed diplomacy and misunderstandings. Let us remember that we are all part of the same human story, he urged. The courage displayed in the heat of battle must be matched by our courage to build a future of peace and understanding. We owe it to those who fought and fell to ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the gathering as people began to share their own stories. Young pilots spoke of their aspirations, inspired by the legacy of the Hellcat and the men who had flown it. Families of veterans expressed gratitude for the sacrifices made by their loved ones, and children listened wide-eyed, absorbing the history that surrounded them. Harrington felt a renewed sense of purpose as he watched the younger generation engage with the stories of the past. He knew that the legacy of the Hellcat extended beyond the skies. It was about fostering a spirit of resilience and unity that could transcend borders and conflicts. In the following years, Harrington continued to advocate for education and remembrance. He collaborated with schools to implement history programs that focused on the lessons of World War II, emphasizing the importance of understanding different perspectives and promoting peace. He believed that by educating young minds about the past, they could cultivate empathy and work towards a more harmonious world. As he grew older, Harrington also took part in documentary projects that sought to immortalize the stories of the pilots who had fought in the Pacific. These films highlighted not only the technical aspects of air combat, but also the human experiences behind the uniforms. They served as a reminder that history is not merely a collection of dates and events. It is a tapestry woven from the lives of individuals who dared to dream, to fight, and to make a difference. The Hellcat, once a machine of war, transformed into a symbol of hope and resilience. It became a rallying point for discussions about the future of aviation, military ethics, and the importance of international cooperation. Harrington's voice echoed through these conversations, always advocating for lessons learned from the past to guide the actions of future generations. And as he stood at the airfield, surrounded by the laughter of children and the camaraderie of his fellow veterans, Harrington felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The legacy of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot and the Hellcat lived on, not just in the annals of history but in the hearts and minds of those who sought to learn from it. Together we can shape a future where courage leads to understanding, he thought, a smile breaking across his face as he watched the next generation take flight into the unknown. It was a future filled with promise, a future where the lessons of the past would illuminate the path ahead. Would you like me to continue with any specific themes or details? Or is there something else you would like to explore? Chapter 13. A Legacy of Peace. As the years slipped by, Harrington became a beacon of wisdom and experience, guiding young aviators and fostering a sense of duty that extended beyond the cockpit. His voice became synonymous with remembrance, and his commitment to educating future generations was unwavering. He understood that the lessons learned from the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot were not confined to the realm of military strategy. They were lessons about humanity, resilience, and the pursuit of peace. In the wake of the war, as tensions between nations ebbed and flowed, Harrington took a keen interest in diplomacy. He recognized that the same spirit that had propelled pilots into the sky during World War II could also be harnessed to bridge divides and foster understanding among nations. He began to advocate for initiatives that emphasize collaboration between military and civilian sectors, believing that shared experiences could pave the way for a more peaceful future. One of Harrington's proudest achievements came when he helped organize an international aviation summit, bringing together military leaders, historians, and aviation enthusiasts from around the world. The event aimed to foster dialogue and promote cooperation in aviation safety and technology. As he stood before the diverse audience, Harrington felt a sense of purpose wash over him. Today, we gather not just as representatives of our nations, but as stewards of a shared legacy, he began, his voice resonating with conviction. The skies belong to all of us, and it is our responsibility to ensure that they are a place of peace and collaboration rather than conflict. The summit featured discussions on the importance of training, the role of technology in modern warfare, and the ethical implications of aerial combat. Harrington shared stories from the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, illustrating how preparation and innovation had turned the tide of battle. He emphasized that the lessons learned during wartime could inform present-day practices and help prevent future conflicts. By fostering connections among military leaders from different countries, Harrington aimed to create a network of understanding that would transcend borders. He believed that by sharing knowledge and experiences, nations could work together to address common challenges, such as airspace security, environmental concerns, and humanitarian missions. In addition to his advocacy for international cooperation, Harrington continued to mentor young pilots, emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in their training. He often reminded them that they would not only be flying machines, but would also carry the weight of their nation's histories and aspirations. Remember, the skies are not just a battleground, they are a canvas for our dreams, he would tell them. Your actions in the air can shape the course of history just as they did for us. His mentorship extended beyond technical training, and he instilled in his students a sense of duty to honor those who had come before them. He encouraged them to study the past, to understand the complexities of war, and to recognize that every pilot, regardless of their allegiance, was driven by a desire to protect their homeland and their loved ones. Harrington's efforts did not go unnoticed. He received accolades and recognition from various organizations for his contributions to aviation and peacekeeping. But for him, the true reward lay in the faces of the young pilots he inspired and the conversations he sparked among military leaders. Each connection made was a step toward a brighter, more collaborative future. As the twilight of his career approached, Harrington found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had witnessed the evolution of aviation from the days of the Hellcat to the modern era of drones and advanced fighter jets. Yet he remained steadfast in his belief that the essence of flying was rooted in the same principles that had guided him during the war: courage, innovation, and the unwavering pursuit of peace. On the anniversary of the Turkey Shoot, he gathered once more with veterans and their families. The gathering had become a cherished tradition, a time to reminisce and honor the sacrifices made. As he looked around the room, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the bonds forged in the crucible of combat and the friendships that had endured through the years. Harrington stood to address the crowd, his voice steady and filled with emotion. Today, we honor not only our victories but also the lessons that come from our shared history. The skies above us are a testament to our past, but they also hold the promise of our future. Let us commit ourselves to ensuring that those who fly in the skies do so in the spirit of cooperation and understanding. As the evening wore on, stories flowed freely, laughter echoed, and tears were shed. Harrington realized that while the past shaped their lives, it was the future they were building together that truly mattered. The legacy of the Hellcat and the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, would continue to inspire not just as a tale of victory, but as a beacon of hope for a world striving for peace. And so, with a heart full of pride and a spirit unyielding, Harrington embraced the future, ready to pass on the lessons of the past to the next generation. The story of the Hellcat would live on, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, the human spirit could soar to unimaginable heights. Would you like me to continue with more themes or a specific focus? Or is there something else you would like to explore in this narrative? Chapter 14. The Next Generation of Aviators. As time moved forward, the echoes of Harrington's experiences began to resonate with a new generation of aviators. Young men and women stepped into flight schools inspired by the stories of courage and resilience that had been passed down through the years. They were not just learning to fly, they were embracing a legacy that had been forged in the skies over the Pacific during a time of war. Harrington took an active role in these flight schools, serving as a guest speaker and mentor. His presence instilled a sense of purpose in the students, reminding them that they were part of a larger narrative, one that extended beyond their individual journeys to the skies. He would often begin his talks by sharing the lessons learned from the Great Mariana's turkey shoot, weaving in the importance of teamwork, preparation, and the moral responsibilities of being a pilot. Flying is not just about mastering the controls or understanding aerodynamics, he would say, his voice steady and firm. It's about understanding the impact of your actions, both in the air and on the ground. You carry the weight of history with you, and it is your duty to honor those who came before you by striving for excellence in every flight. The students listened intently, absorbing the wisdom of a man who had lived through a pivotal moment in history. They were captivated by his stories of bravery, the camaraderie of the pilots, and the evolution of aerial combat. Harrington emphasized the importance of learning from both successes and failures, urging them to study the past as they prepared for the future. Among the students was a young woman named Emily, a passionate aviator who dreamed of flying fighter jets. She had grown up hearing stories of the Hellcat and the legendary pilots who had flown them. To her, Harrington was a living link to that history, and she found herself captivated by his experiences and insights. One day, after a particularly engaging lecture, Emily approached Harrington, her eyes shining with determination. "Sir, how can I ensure that I honor the legacy of the Hellcat and the pilots who fought in the Pacific?" she asked earnestly. Harrington smiled, recognizing the fire in her spirit. "You honor that legacy by being the best pilot you can be," he replied. "Train hard, learn constantly, and always strive to improve. But beyond that, let your actions reflect the values we hold dear: integrity, respect, and a commitment to peace. Remember, every time you take to the skies, you represent not just yourself, but all those who have flown before you." Encouraged by his words, Emily dedicated herself to her training. She immersed herself in her studies, committed to mastering the intricacies of flight and the principles of aerial combat. Harrington often saw her in the flight simulation rooms, poring over manuals, practicing maneuvers, and engaging with her fellow students in discussions about strategy and ethics in aviation. As graduation approached, Harrington decided to host a special ceremony to honor the students who had excelled in their training. He invited veterans from the Great Mariana's turkey shoot, including those who had flown the Hellcat, to share their experiences and wisdom with the graduating class. The event emphasized the continuity of the legacy that linked past, present, and future aviators. On the day of the ceremony, the airfield was filled with excitement. Family members, friends, and fellow aviators gathered to celebrate the achievements of the graduating class. Harrington stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of eager faces. "As you prepare to take flight into your future, Remember that the skies are vast and full of opportunities, he began, his voice resonating with pride. You are the torchbearers of a legacy that stretches back to those who fought valiantly in the skies above the Pacific. Make your mark, not just as pilots, but as leaders who embody the spirit of collaboration and understanding. Emily stood among her classmates, her heart racing with anticipation. The moment felt monumental, a culmination of years of hard work and determination. As Harrington called each student's name and presented them with their wings, she felt a surge of pride and emotion. This was not just an achievement for herself, it was a tribute to those who had paved the way for her journey. When it was Emily's turn, she stepped forward, a mix of nerves and excitement bubbling within her. Harrington pinned the wings to her uniform, his expression one of encouragement and belief. Fly high, Emily. The skies await your courage, he said softly, locking eyes with her. As the ceremony concluded, the graduates posed for photographs, their wings gleaming in the sunlight. Emily felt a sense of camaraderie with her classmates, each one sharing in the joy of this milestone, but she also understood that their journey was just beginning. The skies would challenge them, test their skills, and require them to uphold the values they had embraced during their training. In the months that followed, Emily and her classmates began their careers, facing the realities of flying in a modern world. They flew missions that required precision and teamwork, and as they soared through the skies, they carried with them the lessons imparted by Harrington and the legacy of the Hellcat. As Harrington watched from the sidelines, he knew that the future of aviation was in capable hands. The next generation of pilots was not only equipped with technical skills, but also imbued with a sense of purpose and responsibility that would guide them in their journeys. The legacy of the Hellcat continued to inspire, reminding them all that flight was a privilege, one that came with the responsibility to honor those who had fought before them. Harrington's heart swelled with pride as he recognized that the spirit of the great Mariana's turkey shoot lived on through these young aviators ready to take to the skies and shape the future of aviation.